the chair of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, Gary Barta. So, Gary, I'm going to start, even though they weren't the last team in your bracket, in the 14 bracket, but with Ohio State. Why did the committee decide, contrary to what a lot of accomplished coaches have said, that 6 games justified enough resume to put the Buckeyes into the field?
Well, the committee decided that Ohio State belonged in the field because they're undefeated. They had beaten 2 ranked teams throughout the year, including last night, and they won their Big Ten championship. So that's why the committee decided it. Certainly, we've talked a lot since the beginning of the year that there would be a differential in number of games played. But in the end, it came down to the committee feeling strongly that undefeated, beating those ranked teams and winning a conference championship.
But a conference championship that is about half as long as some of the others. Was there objection in the room in terms of the discussion to the number of games that Ohio State played?
There's been discussion all along about, you have undefeated Alabama, you have undefeated Ohio State, you have undefeated, I'll go down the line, Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, San Jose State. We knew that was going to be a problem, and we were addressing it along the way. But in the end, there was not dissension in the room about naming Ohio State in that 3rd spot.
Gary, understanding the restrictions of the pandemic and the different paths that conferences chose to take in this season, it's easy to see why you would have uneven things. But there's also the school of thought that if you can just keep the 0 in the loss column, you can play 6 games, you can get into the playoff. What impact do you anticipate this has on scheduling in the future? Because teams could say, look, I just have to keep the 0 in the loss column. Doesn't even matter how many games I played. What's your reaction to that?
Well, as somebody who lives on campus and deals with scheduling, I can tell you there's never been a season like 2020 coming into this year. And I certainly hope, for a lot of reasons, that there won't be a season like this again. So I think it would be a challenge to use this year, the pandemic year, to try to estimate how one should schedule their football seasons in the future. And I really don't think that'll happen because I think people do realize that this was an extremely unique set of circumstances.
And so I think many would believe, but perhaps some skepticism, that this could be a one-off situation. For the last spot, you had Notre Dame 4, Texas A&M 5. Both teams, one-loss teams with decisive losses at the hands of the teams that you have 1 and 2. What gave the Fighting Irish the edge over the Aggies?
Well, you painted the picture of 2 teams that have really similar resumes. They've played similar schedules. Coming into this weekend, Notre Dame was undefeated. They had beaten the number 2 team now in Clemson, and on the road against the number 13 team in North Carolina. And Texas A&M's top win was against a very good Florida team. So very similar resumes, but in the end, the committee felt like Notre Dame had earned its way there based on the complete analysis of the resume, and that probably came down to having an additional win against a ranked team.
And then in terms of the matchups, and the Rose Bowl game has been moved from Pasadena to Dallas. Historically, an SEC champion would go to the Sugar Bowl. Why was the Alabama-Notre Dame game placed in the Rose Bowl in Dallas?
Again, related to the uniqueness of this year, the number 1 seed, the number 1 team is by the committee is always given the benefit of the doubt or maybe the biggest advantage. And in this case, we know that there's going to be 16,000 fans able to watch in Arlington, and we know that there's going to be 3,000 fans that are going to be able to be watching the game in New Orleans. So the committee decided that the advantage was for the number 1 team to have more fans able to watch them play.
Okay. And we've talked a lot, and we haven't seen where the committee wound up with Cincinnati ranked, but it has been a big point of discussion up to here, and the evaluation of group of 5 teams. And you and I have discussed this earlier. Mike Oresco, the commissioner of the American, saying, well, maybe we might as well go back to the BCS because if you're not in a Power 5, you don't have a fair shot at this. What held Cincinnati back? What kept them from, I mean, obviously they weren't in consideration at all for the top 4. They're not even in the top 6.
Well, I don't know that anything held them back. The committee has great respect for Cincinnati. They're undefeated. They won their conference championship last night in a last-second field goal. A terrific team, but it's comparing them to the 6 teams you see on your board, and it was just believed by the committee that those resumes are stronger overall than Cincinnati's resume.
All right, Gary Barta, who is the chair of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, joined us on Tuesday nights all year. We appreciate that. And when we reveal the rest of the rankings.